All right, David, let me ask you a question here. The third degree charge that we were talking about before that has now been included. When it was a second degree, they had to show that there was an underlying assault that had occurred and that it was the intentional, and this is the big word, infliction or attempt to inflict bodily injury. We can get into all sorts of policies and procedures and whether they were followed or they weren't followed. With the inclusion of the third degree murder charge now, which we've all agreed is going to make the defense's job more difficult, it's an act that's imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without the regard to human life. It has been my opinion that if I were prosecuting this case, that I would be doing six things: show the video, the people's comments to the extent the judge will admit them into evidence as this is actually unfolding, and they're like saying stop and he can't breathe and those kind of things. The training that they receive that they are supposed to not do it for a person who is not actively resisting, which certainly at a certain point Mr. Floyd was not. 404 with regard to a previous complaint where he may have known a Chauvin about what to do in order to rescue somebody from a situation so that they're not injured. And the fact that a police officer on the scene, one of the four charged, actually wanted to put Mr. Floyd in a side recovery position, and the defendant said, no, don't do that, and also denied a request of an EMT or a fire person who to render medical treatment. So there's all these objective people, a police officer, the community, a rescue person, all witnessing the same event being rebuffed by Chauvin. I would end the case with that. And of course, the video is the pièce de résistance, of course, but end it there. Keep it simple. What do you think?
I agree, Bob. And I think out of the points that you just laid out, the one that is probably the most important, at least in my opinion, is the opinion of the fellow officer, right? I think it was Officer Lane who suggested that they move Mr. Floyd on his side, because that should ring true, or really make a statement to those people that are on that jury that are going to second guess Floyd's actions, Mr. Floyd's actions, but be a little hesitant with the cop and say, hey, we need to give deference to these officers. They're doing a dangerous job. When you have another fellow officer telling you, hey, you might want to move him on his side, this is kind of dangerous, or I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, Chauvin disregarding that, that's a big, big concern, in my opinion, more than the other factors as we're dealing with third degree murder.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting point. David, your thoughts in terms of defending this case? It is my position, and maybe it is not yours. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. That the defense needs to do a really great job at pounding the law here as much as possible because the facts just are not pretty for them.
Without question, Bob, the facts and the emotion of the jurors when they see that video, and when they see, as we just talked about, Chauvin with his sunglasses just casually on top of his head, with his hand casually in his pocket, with that look, just sort of in a cavalier manner, just looking at the bystanders who are pleading for him to roll Mr. Floyd on his side so he doesn't take his life, so we're not in this position. And I think as a defense attorney, it's even more of a struggle in this time of COVID, in an effort to try and humanize Chauvin to the jurors, to be able to have that casual conversation with him in the courtroom for the jurors to see, because you're separated by plexiglass, even though he's out on bond. You can't put your arm around him. You can't, really talk to him in a casual way, so they could see that, despite an abhorrent act that was captured on video, he too is a human being deserving of a fair trial. And I think that's another obstacle that the defense has in this case.
I know we're way ahead of the game, but let me ask you just prediction. Does Chauvin need to get on the stand or not?